Riley's heart raced as she stood before the imposing oak door of the Blackwood mansion. The brass knocker gleamed in the fading sunlight, mocking her hesitation. At 22, she was about to embark on a journey that would change her life forever, though she couldn't have known it then. With a deep breath, she raised her hand and knocked, the sound echoing through the grand foyer beyond. The door swung open, revealing William Blackwood, a man whose reputation preceded him. At 45, he cut an impressive figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair that only added to his distinguished appearance. His steel gray eyes locked onto Riley's, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. "You must be Miss Thompson," he said, his voice a rich baritone that sent an involuntary shiver down Riley's spine. "Please, come in." Riley stepped into the foyer, her eyes widening as she took in the opulent surroundings. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors and antique furniture. It was a far cry from the modest apartment she shared with her roommate in the city. "Thank you for considering me for the position, Mr. Blackwood," Riley said, proud that her voice didn't betray her nervousness. William's lips curved into a slight smile. "William, please, and the pleasure is mine. Your references were impeccable." As he led her through the house, explaining her duties as his new personal assistant, Riley couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. The job offer had come at the perfect time. She was fresh out of college, drowning in student debt, and desperate for a break. When her former professor had mentioned that an old friend was looking for an assistant, Riley had jumped at the opportunity. What she hadn't expected was the instant attraction she felt towards her new employer. It wasn't just his physical appearance, though that certainly played a part. There was an air of mystery about William, a hint of sadness in his eyes that made Riley want to know more. Over the next few weeks, Riley settled into her new role. Her days were filled with managing William's schedule, coordinating with his business partners, and helping to organize charity events. The work was demanding but rewarding, and Riley found herself thriving in the fast-paced environment. As time passed, she began to notice the little things about William, the way his brow furrowed when he was deep in thought, the rare but genuine smile that lit up his face when he was pleased, the gentle way he spoke to his elderly housekeeper. Slowly but surely, Riley's initial attraction began to deepen into something more. For his part, William found himself increasingly drawn to his young assistant. Her intelligence, quick wit, and compassion were a breath of fresh air in his often cynical world. He caught himself looking forward to their morning meetings, savoring the moments when their hands would brush as she handed him his coffee. But William was all too aware of the impropriety of his growing feelings. He was more than twice Riley's age, her employer, and carried the weight of a past that he couldn't easily shake. Still, he couldn't deny the spark that ignited whenever they were in the same room. One evening, as a summer storm raged outside, Riley was working late in William's study. The power had gone out, and the room was illuminated only by the flickering light of candles. William entered, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie loosened, a rare sight of him in a less than perfectly put-together state. "I thought you might want some company," he said, setting down 2 glasses of wine on the desk. "It's getting late, and this storm doesn't seem to be letting up." Riley accepted the glass gratefully, acutely aware of William's proximity as he leaned against the desk beside her. The candlelight cast shadows across his face, softening his features and making him look younger, more vulnerable. "Thank you," she murmured, taking a sip of the rich red wine. "I'm almost finished with these reports." William waved his hand dismissively. "They can wait until morning. You work too hard, Riley." The use of her first name, something he rarely did, sent a thrill through her. She looked up at him, meeting his intense gaze. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. "I enjoy my work," Riley said softly. "I enjoy being here." William's hand moved as if to touch her face, but he pulled back at the last moment. "Riley," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I think you should know that I—" A loud crack of thunder interrupted him, making them both jump. The moment was broken, and William stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "I should let you get some rest," he said, his professional demeanor sliding back into place. "Good night, Miss Thompson." As he left the study, Riley let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She knew, in that moment, that she was in dangerous territory. Her feelings for William were no longer just a harmless crush. They were deep, all-consuming, and utterly forbidden. The next few months passed in a haze of stolen glances, lingering touches, and unspoken desires. Riley threw herself into her work, trying to ignore the way her heart raced whenever William was near. For his part, William maintained a careful distance, though his eyes often followed Riley when she wasn't looking. Everything changed on the night of the annual Blackwood Foundation Gala. The mansion was transformed into a glittering wonderland, with hundreds of guests in formal wear mingling and dancing. Riley, dressed in a sleek emerald gown, was busy ensuring everything ran smoothly. As she was checking on the catering in the kitchen, she felt a hand on her arm. She turned to find William standing there, looking devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo. "Dance with me," he said, his voice low and intense. Riley knew she should refuse, but found herself nodding instead. William led her to the dance floor, pulling her close as a slow, romantic song began to play. As they swayed to the music, Riley could feel the heat of William's body, smell his expensive cologne. She looked up at him, seeing her own longing reflected in his eyes. "We shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, even as she pressed closer to him. William's hand tightened on her waist. "I know," he replied, his voice rough. "But I can't pretend anymore, Riley. I can't ignore what I feel for you." The world seemed to fade away as William lowered his head, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was both tender and passionate. Riley melted into him, all thoughts of propriety vanishing as she lost herself in the moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, reality came crashing back. Riley stepped away, her mind reeling. I need some air," she stammered, fleeing the ballroom and heading for the gardens. The cool night air did little to calm her racing heart. Riley paced along the moonlit paths, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She knew that what had just happened was wrong on so many levels, but it had felt so right. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see William approaching. His bow tie was undone, his hair slightly mussed, a far cry from his usual impeccable appearance. "Riley," he said, his voice pleading, "we need to talk about this." She shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "What is there to talk about? You're my boss, William. This, whatever this is, it can't happen." William reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why we shouldn't pursue this, but I can't deny my feelings for you any longer. You've brought light back into my life, Riley. You make me want to be a better man." Riley leaned into his touch, her resolve weakening. "I have feelings for you too," she admitted. "But I'm scared. What if this ruins everything?" William pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "We'll figure it out together," he promised, "if you're willing to try." In that moment, standing in the moonlit garden, Riley made a decision that would alter the course of her life. She tilted her head up, capturing William's lips in a kiss that was full of promise and possibility. From that night on, Riley and William embarked on a passionate, secret relationship. They stole moments together whenever they could, lingering touches as they passed in the hallway, heated kisses in the privacy of William's study, whispered conversations late into the night. But as their relationship deepened, so did the complications. Riley struggled with the guilt of lying to her friends and family about the nature of her relationship with her boss. William, for his part, was torn between his growing love for Riley and his fear of the scandal that would erupt if their affair was discovered. Their stolen moments of happiness were often overshadowed by the weight of their secret. Riley found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, terrified that someone would discover the truth. William became increasingly paranoid, worried that his business rivals would use his relationship with Riley against him. Despite the challenges, their love continued to grow. William opened up to Riley about his past, his failed marriage, the loss of his child, the years of loneliness that had hardened his heart. Riley shared her own fears and dreams, finding in William a partner who truly understood and supported her. But as with all secrets, theirs eventually came to light. It was a crisp autumn day when Riley arrived at the mansion to find William in a heated argument with a woman she didn't recognize. As she approached, she caught snippets of their conversation. "You can't keep this hidden forever, William," the woman was saying. "Do you really think no one has noticed the way you look at that girl?" William's face was pale with anger. "This is none of your business, Margaret. What I do in my personal life becomes my business when it affects the company," Margaret snapped. "Do you have any idea what this could do to our reputation if it gets out? A man your age carrying on with his young assistant? It's a scandal waiting to happen." Riley felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath her feet. She must have made a sound, because both William and Margaret turned to look at her. The shock and guilt on William's face told her everything she needed to know. "Riley," he said, taking a step towards her. "I can explain." But Riley was already backing away, her mind reeling. She turned and ran, ignoring William's calls behind her. She drove home in a daze, tears blurring her vision. The next few days passed in a blur of pain and confusion. Riley ignored William's calls and messages, unable to face the reality of their situation. She knew that Margaret was right. Their relationship, if exposed, would be a scandal that could ruin both of their lives. When she finally agreed to meet with William, it was with a heavy heart. They sat in his study, the room that had once been the site of so many happy memories, now feeling oppressive and suffocating. "I'm sorry," William said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I never meant for you to find out like that. Margaret is my ex-wife and she—" "It doesn't matter," Riley interrupted. "She's right, isn't she? Us, it can't work. There's too much at stake." William reached across the desk, taking her hand in his. "I love you, Riley. We can find a way to make this work. I'll step down from the company if I have to. We can—" Riley pulled her hand away, tears streaming down her face. "And then what? Live with the whispers, the judgment? I'd always wonder if people thought I was just a gold digger, if they believed I'd slept my way to the top. And you? You'd resent me for making you give up everything you've worked for." "I could never resent you," William insisted. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." But even as he said the words, Riley could see the doubt in his eyes. She knew that he was thinking of the scandal, of the damage to his reputation, of the years he'd spent building his empire. "I think it's best if I resign," Riley said softly. "We both know this can't continue." William's face crumpled in pain. "Please, Riley, don't do this. We can find another way." But Riley had made up her mind. With a heavy heart, she stood, leaning across the desk to place one last tender kiss on William's lips. "Goodbye, William," she whispered, before turning and walking out of the study, out of the mansion, and out of his life. The months that followed were some of the hardest of Riley's life. She threw herself into finding a new job, trying to ignore the ache in her heart. William respected her wishes and didn't try to contact her, though she often caught glimpses of him in the society pages, looking older and more tired than she remembered. It was almost a year later when fate intervened. Riley was at a charity event for her new employer when she quite literally bumped into William. The shock of seeing him up close after so long nearly took her breath away. "Riley," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of surprise and longing. You look wonderful." "Thank you," she replied, her heart racing. "You look well too." They stood there awkwardly for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. Finally, William spoke. "I've missed you," he said softly. "Not a day has gone by that I haven't thought of you." Riley felt tears pricking at her eyes. "I've missed you too," she admitted. "But nothing's changed, has it? We still can't be together." William took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "Actually, everything's changed. I've stepped down as CEO. I'm just a board member now. And I've been seeing a therapist, working through my issues." Riley's eyes widened in surprise. "You did all that?" William nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "I realized that none of it meant anything without you. I know I hurt you, and I know I have a lot to make up for. But if you're willing, I'd like a chance to try again, to do things right this time." Riley's mind was spinning. She thought of all the pain, all the sleepless nights, all the times she'd convinced herself she was better off without him. But looking into William's eyes, seeing the love and hope there, she felt her resolve crumbling. "It won't be easy," she warned. "People will still talk." William reached out, taking her hand in his. "Let them talk. All that matters is us. If you'll have me, I promise to spend the rest of my life making you happy." In that moment, standing in a crowded ballroom with the man she loved, Riley made another life-changing decision. She squeezed William's hand, a smile breaking across her face. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's try again." As William pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion and love he'd been holding back for the past year, Riley knew that their journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome. But she also knew that what they had was worth fighting for. Their love story wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated, filled with highs and lows, passion and pain. But as they left the charity event hand in hand, ready to face the world together, Riley and William knew that they had found something rare and precious, a love that could withstand any storm, a connection that transcended age and social expectations. As they drove away from the event, the city lights twinkling around them, Riley rested her head on William's shoulder. She thought about the journey that had brought them to this point, the stolen moments, the heartbreak, the growth and change they'd both undergone. "What are you thinking about?" William asked, his voice soft in the quiet car. Riley smiled, intertwining her fingers with his. "I'm thinking about how sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected places, and how love, real love, is worth every risk and every struggle." William brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I couldn't agree more," he murmured. As they drove into the night, towards a future that was uncertain but full of promise, Riley felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that loving William wouldn't always be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles ahead. But she also knew, with a certainty that ran bone deep, that this was where she was meant to be. Their story was one of passion and perseverance, of two people who found each other against all odds and fought to build a love that could stand the test of time. And as the city faded behind them and the open road stretched out ahead, Riley and William embarked on the next chapter of their journey, together at last.